Well, it is April the 21st, 1:04 p.m. here on the west coast of the United States of America. Welcome to our live Friday Q&A sessions. And as we start, my good friend Saad says, I hate how you have to both close and dismiss the poll. Complain to YouTube, my friend. Complain to YouTube. I don't have any control over that. They're the ones who do it. It's just a very nice reminder, I think, for folks to go ahead and hit that like button, because it really does help in some weird way that I don't understand. Yet, I believe it. Would that be considered an epistemically justified belief or not is the real question that we would have to deal with. Nonetheless, I hope you're having a good Friday. We're going to be on, so it's 1 o'clock. We will be on till about 2:15, 2:20, I'm guessing. 2:20 the latest is when we would be on. This is West Coast time, obviously. Partly because I have to take my oldest son to the dentist to extract a tooth that is infected that he's been having a hard time with. So, how can I help you, Alex? How you doing? He says, quiz question. You guys aren't going to get your quiz today. You guys are going to get it next week. Good afternoon. What's up, Carl? What's up, Alpha? How you doing? What's up, Jonah? I gotta sneeze. Oh, man. Is drinking Red Bull a sin since it's bad for our body, or anything we do that is bad for our body a sin? No, I wouldn't say it's a sin. It doesn't seem like the Bible in any way categorizes doing things that could potentially be harmful to your body a sin. I think that's probably a view that people kind of extrapolate, right? They pull out these kinds of sort of things. Suppose not only things that you... So let's reason through this, right? What about food that you eat that is bad for you? I'm not saying go indulge in bad food, by the way, and I'm not saying go indulge in bad things. I just have a very, very narrow definition of what is sin, in the sense that I call things a sin that the Bible calls a sin. I don't mind saying that's bad for you, don't do it. I don't mind saying that something is unwise to do, so don't do it. Or, hey, do you understand the risk you're taking in doing this thing? But to call it a sin, in my opinion, would be putting words in the mouth of God, especially rules and laws and stuff like that. Then I'm very, very careful with that. I don't ever want to do that, because I don't want to put words in the mouth of God that God has never said. Therefore, it creates legalism. So suppose like food you eat, hamburgers, I had a Big Mac last night. Now that's not a common thing that I eat. I don't eat McDonald's food regularly, but every once in a while, I guess our friends decided, hey, we're going to get some Big Macs. Anybody want one? So I'm pretty sure Big Mac and the fries that we had, even the soda that we drank, was bad for us. Therefore, did we sin? No, I don't think we sinned. Now, I would say if we're addicted to it, yeah. I mean, if you're drinking Red Bull and you have some kind of any addiction to anything is a sin, by the way. Addiction itself is a sin, so that's fine. I'm okay with that. But to call something being bad for you physically a sin, I think is not what the Bible teaches. It just say it's bad for you. You don't need to call something a sin in order to convince people they shouldn't be doing it. Just say it's bad for you and you shouldn't do it. I just, quite often I see folks in the church doing this, saying something is a sin, because I think it's easier to get people to obey when you call something a sin. But again, I tend to not, I just really don't like putting words in the mouth of God. And anybody who does so, I have a hard time with. So the other thing I was going to mention is, what about stuff that you should be doing that you're not doing? Like regular exercise, for example. Are you not harming your body by not regularly exercising? Well, yes. So is that a sin? See where I'm going with this? It's overly simplistic to say you drank Red Bull, therefore it's a sin. What about things that are harmful to you, or harmful to certain parts of you and good for other parts, right? So, let's just think about chemotherapy. Chemotherapy is bad for you, but it is also good for you. It's harming your body. Chemotherapy harms your body. Is that a sin? The logic, this sort of logic, and by the way, this is one of the tactics is applied. It's a logical kind of taking an idea and then driving it to its logical conclusion. If something is a sin because it's bad for your body, it would have to apply in any case. So the chemotherapy case would have to apply. But you go, oh no, chemotherapy is okay. Well, why is it okay in that case? Because it's really, really harmful for you. What's worse for you, chemotherapy or drinking Red Bull? See where I'm going with this? So, yeah, I don't think it's a sin. Just don't do it. If you think it's bad for you, don't do it. I don't regularly drink Red Bull. I used to actually, when I was in college, I used to drink Red Bull. I actually used to drink Monster quite a bit, and I had a really, really bad experience with Monster. I did this all-nighter. I hadn't slept for 24 hours plus, and then I was getting on my way to school to turn in my assignment. And then I was like, dude, I need some energy. So I had Monster, and then I started like shaking really bad, like very jittery. That might have been the last time I had Monster. Well, I was like, no, my heart was beating really fast, and I was like, Red Bull every once in a while, I'll drink it. But yeah, I drink coffee, I drink tea, mineral water. That's about it. I tried not to drink soda to the best of my abilities. I hope that made sense. Tomic says, guess the quote. Whoever drinks beer, he is quick to sleep. Whoever sleeps long does not sin. Whoever does not sin enters heaven. Thus, let us drink beer. I would say Martin Luther. My guess would be Luther. Uh-oh. Mr. Pisabi is here. Is Mr. Pisabi advocating for drinking beer? Not sure. So it is Luther. I was right. I'm really late to this, but I'm trying to figure out what you're late to. Really late to this, but I was just watching a few videos about the 21 Egyptian Christians, men that were beheaded by ISIS for being Christians. How often do you think this happens? It doesn't happen that often in Egypt specifically. Look, this was happening quite a bit when ISIS was very dominant and powerful in its regions. But I don't look now beheadings and stuff like that. Are Christians being killed around the world for their faith? Yeah. Some of the I think I don't want to give out false information. So I won't name a country, but I think quite a bit of this happens in some African countries where there's large Christian and Muslim populations. Will we have any debates with Muslims today? I don't know. Yeah, I got that. Remember, this is the live Q&A, so, and we're limited on time today. They're now considered Orthodox. Yeah, so they were Coptic Christians. I'm pretty sure they were Coptic Christians. So they're Egyptian Copts, and it would make sense that they would. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't read any of the comments. So I'm cleaning them. It's not going away. Coptic Christians are basically Egyptian Christians or Ethiopian Christians. They are a part of the Oriental Orthodox branch. Coptic is specifically a designation to Egyptians. So, hey Diana, can you explain what pronomian is? No, that's not something that immediately gets my thoughts going. So, what is pronomian Christianity? Let's see. I got to watch a video on this because I don't know. I'm assuming the question is along those lines, Diana. Has to do with pronomian Christianity.
Hey there, my name is Josh, and today I would like to talk to you about pronomian Christianity. Pronomian Christianity has kind of been like this buzzword that's been popping up on the internet for the past year. It, along with pronomianism or pronomian theology, you've probably seen these words pop up and maybe on Facebook or just on Twitter, something like that. And so I'd like to clear up some confusion because I keep getting some questions asked to me pretty regularly. Guys like my friends Caleb Haig and Jeff Young and myself have been using these terms for about a year now, and people have been asking me, well, is pronomian Christianity a movement? And if it is it different or associated with the Hebrew roots movement or the Messianic movement? To that, I would say that no. Pronomian Christianity is a movement, but it is not associated with the Hebrew roots movement or the Messianic movement. The reason it's not associated with the Hebrew roots movement is that pronomian Christianity finds some issues with doctrines that are found within the Hebrew roots movement. And in regards to the Messianic movement, pronomian Christians don't identify with Messianic liturgy. We don't look like Messianics liturgically. Pronomian Christianity is an Orthodox Protestant Christian camp.
Orthodox Protestant. So they're Protestants. Okay.
Which affirms Protestant Christian doctrines such as the 66-book canon, Trinitarianism, the 5 solas, but yet it also adds to it a law-positive, a pronomian theology. So we are law-positive Christians. We're not part of the Hebrew roots movement.
So they're saying, hey, we're Christians, we're Protestants, we believe all this stuff, but we also think you should keep the law.
We're not Messianics. We are Christians who want to keep God's law because we hold a high value for God's law. So pronomian Christians, I think, is a great middle ground for traditional Christian doctrines while also coming to the realization that God's law is applicable to our lives and we ought to be keeping it the best we can out of reverence for God and in response to Him saving us.
Okay. You want to keep the law? Keep it. As long as they're not, my issue is as long as they're not demanding that others keep it, as long as they're not saying we're better Christians than you because we keep it, as long as they're not saying that it's required for salvation, which it doesn't seem like they are, because if they affirm the 5 solas, then they're affirming that salvation is by grace alone. So, yeah, they want to keep the law because they're like, hey, we feel this way. Good for you.
So if this sounds like something that you identify with, or maybe it sounds like something that really describes you, we would love for you to get involved with us and to join our communities. There are some links in the description below to our Discord server. We've got some Facebook groups. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok and stuff like that and really get involved. We're growing, the movement's growing, and I really want to continue to see it grow because we've seen some awesome friendships and awesome brother and sister bonds being built already within this movement. And it's only going to grow if people who identify as this join us. So I highly recommend it, and I hope you do. And until next time, see ya.
Yeah, it seems to me that it's probably keeping the dietary laws would be the thing that would immediately come to my mind. Saad says, I wonder what he defines as the law. So they have a website called pronomian.com. They don't deny the Trinity. What? Tom, yes, because they hold to modalism. What? Oh, sorry, that's a different question. So before I go on to what Tom is saying, let me try to figure out. Yeah, I mean, simply put, it's people who want to keep the law. Whatever that means and whatever that looks like in regards to keeping the law, but they want to keep the law. Okay. I think quite a bit of first century Jews who became Christians kept the law. I don't really mind this. I think it only becomes an issue when people demand that it's a salvific issue, where they say you're a better Christian, you're more faithful to the word of God. It only becomes an issue in those cases. If it's not an issue, you don't want to eat pork, man, don't eat pork. I won't eat pork with you. Diana, did that answer your questions? Or if you have a follow-up to that, feel free, please. Would you consider oneness Pentecostalism a damnable heresy? Yes, I would. But I would be very careful with individuals. But the idea itself, yeah, I would say it's a heresy. It's funny that you would say damnable heresy. I would just consider it a heresy. It is unbiblical. It is beyond what the Bible teaches, and so it's heretical. Yeah, well, Jerome, your Arsenal team is losing right now, man. Can't believe they're choking like this. What a shame. You're probably watching Arsenal lose right now. Yep, you shouldn't be confused by it. Again, depends on what they're saying. If they are talking about a requirement, or the New Testament teaches it, something like that. I mean, it'd be interesting as to the way they might view Paul's teachings. But if they're like, we just want to do this. Okay, you want to do it. You have the right as a Christian to do a lot of stuff. So you want to do it, man. By the way, I should have caught on to this a bit quicker, considering that I know what antinomianism is, but I didn't connect my Greek quickly enough. Don't be confused by it. Read, because I think the reality is that some people actually have conscience issues when it comes to some of this stuff, and that's why they gravitate towards those things. And they're not saying it's salvific, they're not saying it's this, they're not saying it's that. They're saying, hey, we as believers want to live our lives this way. This is what I was going after. Correct, Saad. Well done. Hey, we got 13 people in here, but only 9 likes. What a shame. What a shame. Come on, guys. What made you choose Protestantism over Orthodoxy or Catholicism? Well, I didn't necessarily make a choice of that sort early on in my Christian walk. I grew up, obviously, within the Armenian church. I was not a believer. I discovered the gospel. I was introduced to the gospel within a Protestant setting. And frankly, I didn't care much in the early stages. And I was like, you know what? I'm just a Christian, and I'm following Jesus, and this is what it looks like. As I grew theologically, and as I grew understanding and interpreting scripture properly, I realized that I am more inclined to believe the stuff that Protestants believe rather than what Orthodox or Catholics believe. The funny thing is that there's quite a bit of stuff that I'm just like okay with, but there's things I really can't get past when it comes to some of these views. Like I've stated before, like baptismal regeneration, I don't think is anywhere taught in the New Testament. I don't even think that's a proper understanding and view of what baptism looks like within the time frame where baptisms are happening, like John baptizing, so on and so forth. And those are gospel issues for me. Those are issues in the sense of now you're adding to the gospel. Now you're adding to when we're talking about what salvation looks like. Church practice, liturgy, music and song, the way it's done, somber, exciting, smoke machines. That stuff really doesn't bother me. As a matter of fact, at certain times, I enjoy those sort of things quite a bit more than what I would generally call like Protestant setting of worship or something like that. So, yeah, I mean, there are certain doctrinal issues. I would say the difference between Scripture being the final authority compared to the view that Scripture and the church, these are the views that I would just say I can't get past. They're important enough for me to say no to Catholicism and Orthodoxy. Yeah, because I'm angry. I don't want to see Man City win again. And they're just choking. It's over. Game over. 3-1. They're not coming back. You go and lose to Southampton. By the way, for those who don't know, this is the first place team in the Premier League playing the 19th place team in the Premier League. And they're losing 3-1. They are losing 3-1 and they're at home. First place team, home game for them, playing the 19th place team, losing 3-1. Phenomenal. What up, Steven? How you doing, my guy from Estonia? Steven always gets a shout out. When atheists and Muslims argue the Bible is full of violence, they love to bring up Deuteronomy 13:9. Okay, let's bring up Deuteronomy. I'll pull this up on the screen for you guys in a second. I debated with a Muslim today, and he told me that Deuteronomy 13:9, God acts violent. Okay, so let's look at context matters here, right? Okay, let's look at this text, guys. Before we get to Deuteronomy 13:9, and there's violence in the Bible, by the way. If anybody says there's no violence in the Bible, they haven't read the Bible. But the thing is that I don't think there should be an issue with violence. I mean, it makes sense to understand there are reasonable times and places where violence is the necessary reaction. Okay? But, I mean, pacifists would disagree with me on that, but they're wrong. If a prophet or a dreamer of dreams arises among you and gives you a sign or a wonder, and the sign or wonder that tells you comes to pass, and if he says, let us go after other gods, which you have not known, and let us serve them, you shall not listen to the words of that prophet or that dreams of dreams. Essentially, if somebody has dreams that are correct, it actually happens, or they prophesy things that actually happens, but they are telling you, let's go worship other gods, don't listen to them, okay? Because for the Lord our God, for Yahweh our God is testing you to know whether you love the Lord your God and with all your heart and with all your soul, right? So don't listen to them, even if they're right on stuff. So let me like modernize this. If a psychic says correct stuff about you, okay, but they're telling you all sorts of other facts theologically that contradict the Bible, don't listen to them. The reason is given for Israel in this context is that God is testing them, okay, to see whether they're going to remain committed to Yahweh. You shall walk after Yahweh your God and fear him and keep his commandments, obey his voice and shall serve him. By the way, all these things have already been that you shouldn't have other gods before me, so on and so forth. He's expecting them to stay committed to the 10 commandments, which is reasonable. But that prophet or the dreamer of dreams shall be put to death, because he has taught rebellion against the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, redeemed you out of the house of slavery, to make you leave the way in which the Lord your God has commanded you to walk. So you shall purge the evil from amongst your midst. So basically, being being an individual who encourages your fellow Israelites to go and worship other gods is a capital punishment under the law of ancient Israel. Okay? So the idea here is that if the idea is that Deuteronomy is a legal system for all of Israel. And so one of the things is that it is a capital punishment to tell people to worship other gods. This is the law they have in their land. Okay? So this is why it's punishable by death. Okay? There's no issues for me there. Now, we're getting to verse 9. If your brother, the son of your mother, or your son or your daughter, or the wife you embrace, or your friend, essentially anyone who's really close to you, who is as your own soul, entices you secretly, saying, let us go serve other gods. Again, the context here is what? To lead them away from worship of Yahweh, which neither you nor your fathers have known. Some of the gods of the peoples who are around you, whether near you or far from you, from the one end of the earth to the other, you shall not yield to them or listen to them. Nor shall your eye pity him, nor shall you spare him, nor shall you conceal him, but you shall kill him. Your hand shall be the first against him to put him to death, and afterwards the hand of all the people. And then it tells you shall stone him. So it's capital punishment. To lead people astray to worship other gods is punishable by death. Now, the issue that some atheists and some and Muslims might have is they don't understand that this is a part of the old covenant. I mean, I can go day and night mentioning all sorts of laws like this within the old covenant system that new covenant Christians are not under. So what they aren't understanding is the structure of the Bible, the way it's written, the purpose of it, the difference between the covenant God has in the Old Testament with the people of Israel, the rules and laws that they are under compared to what the New Testament teaches in regards to the rules and laws we're under within the New Testament. So to say, I mean, if the claim is that the Bible has violence in it, I would say, yeah, and then what? Is all violence wrong? So, Stephen, one of the things you might want to do is say, well, yeah, we know the Bible has violence in it. I mean, the most violent act we see in the Bible is probably the death and crucifixion of Jesus. The Bible is an adult book. It's got violence in it. Does that make it wrong? Now, what they're trying to do, depends on who we're talking to, is come to some kind of a conclusion. So it could be, let's just say, a Muslim might say, well, hey, you Christians are always accusing us Muslims of being violent and whatever. Our book is a violent book or whatever like that. But your book has violence in it. Now I would say, well, hang on here, buddy. Let's chill a little bit. The question we might want to ask is whether it is the book telling us we need to act in violent ways towards others for whatever reason, or is it not? In this case, it's telling the people of Israel, you should put people to death who are enticing you and are leading you to the worship of other gods. That's the law. The other question you should ask is whether this is applicable in the New Testament. No, it's not applicable in the New Testament. That's why it's called the New Testament. It's the New Covenant. And then compare that to what Islam teaches. Let's just say the accusation is that Islam teaches you should kill the unbeliever. Let's just say, right? Well, if it does teach that, it's not even teaching you these people are misleading people. It's just they just don't believe in Islam, and therefore there's capital punishment on them. Okay. Where are we at our conversation here, right? Now, if we're going to kind of try to draw out moral kind of values and teachings and structure to it, then that becomes a different conversation. Okay. Lex, I'm going to get to this question, okay? I just pulled up the verse, so we'll get to it in a second. What's up, Emma? How you doing, man? Glad you enjoyed the Bible study yesterday. Well done, Saad. What's up, Righteous Through Christ? How you doing? Hey, Future. Future, I heard that there was some kind of a weird controversy that took place from someone from my channel that ended up on Ruslan's channel yesterday. I think Mr. Pisabi got in trouble on Ruslan's stream yesterday. Tell us a little bit about that. Are there covenants in Islamic theology? No, I don't think. Well, yeah, I mean, in Islamic theology, there are covenants in the sense that some Muslims will think that when God made a covenant, he specifically did it with Jews, like that was just for the Jews. And then with Islam, it's like for the world. So there could be that. They might not use covenant language. What they would do in regards to the change of laws is that they believe in something called abrogation. So these are laws that are given that are later on changed. Or statements that are made that are later on abrogated. This is why it's important for folks, I think, both in charity in our conversations with Muslims, as well as critique is whether a said command is abrogated or not. Because you can't just quote. You can't just quote from the Quran and be like, hey, look, it says this, because the Muslim might come back to you and say, well, that's a law that's been abrogated. We're not called to live under it. We're not called to commit it, or something like that. Okay. So yes, I mean, they have a similar sort of thing. And I think that's a reasonable place to have these conversations. Because they're abrogated by another command that comes later. So I think one of them is, man, skip my mind. I'm doing on the ground research as we're having a conversation here. Just, I want to quote some stuff. I don't just want to make claims. So Quran 16. Oh, that's 101, not like. By the way, I don't want to bring like accusatory kind of stuff. I want to bring like legitimate stuff that's abrogated within Islam, and some. Why would they say they were abrogated? So essentially, as far as my understanding is, in Islamic thinking, the later the thing is, it trumps the earlier one. So if there's a later teaching of Muhammad that contradicts an earlier one, they would say then that abrogates that. Or let's just say I'm just making this up just for our conversation purposes. Suppose Muhammad had an earlier revelation that said something like it's okay to drink Coca-Cola. And then he had a later revelation that it says it is no longer okay to drink Coca-Cola. They would say that's abrogation. The later one trumps the earlier one. The earlier one nobody needs to do. For that time period, it was okay to do it, but now it's been abrogated. You don't have to do it. That's the way this happens. I think there's something like this when it comes to gambling and drinking alcohol, where there's now take that with a grain of salt. You can go look it up, but it has to do with an earlier revelation that had to do with it being okay or tolerable or something, and then completely being outlawed. As a matter of fact, I think that was something that was brought up by that gentleman that had called in a couple of weeks ago. Here's an example, by the way. Another example. So an example of his use of partial abrogation, Al-Tabari records in his commentary. Ibn Abbas said, the verse, do not enter houses other than your own house, this is 24:27, was then abrogated, and an exception was given by the verse, there is no blame upon you for entering houses not inhabited in which there is convenience for you. So the verse 24:27 originally laid down a general rule, do not enter the people's houses without their permission, and then a few verses later, 24:29, made an exception to the general rule. You may enter the houses if no one is living there. Okay, that's a breakdown of like where that would come into practice when you're traveling or whatever like that. But here, you guys can go check this out. Give me a second, everyone. I'll drop the link for this for you guys. Sorry, that was my wife. We were trying to figure out our plans as I'm going to take my son to the doctor. Let's answer Lex's question. I think that was a good one. Where is it, Lex? How would you explain to an unbeliever the verse, happy is he who seizes your infants and dashes them against the rocks? So this is out of one of the Psalms, Psalm 137. And here it is. So it says, blessed shall be he who takes your little ones and dashes them against the rocks. So, okay, first and foremost, usually we have to obviously look at something, whether it's a teaching, whether it's an expression, like what's going on. So this is a psalm. It is someone's feelings and thoughts put into song and poetic format for, So I would put this in the same camp as Job's wife saying, curse God and die. Context matters. The psalmist is saying, by the waters of Babylon, there we sat down and wept and we remembered Zion. So they're in exile because the Babylonians have come and taken them. On the willows there we hung up our lyres, for there our captors required of us songs, and our tormentors mirth, saying, sing us one of the songs of Zion. Essentially, they're being oppressed, and then the captors and oppressors are demanding that they continue being happy and sing for them. How shall we sing the Lord's songs in a foreign land? If I forget you, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget its skill. let my tongue stick to the roof of my mouth. I should say that Matisyahu has a song that uses these exact lyrics for those who listen to Matisyahu. If I do not remember you, if I do not set Jerusalem above my highest joy. Jerusalem is mentioned there, by the way, because the temple is there. God's presence is at the temple, so on and so forth. Remember, O Lord, against the Edomites. So the Edomites betrayed them during these Babylonian invasions. The Edomites, who are their brothers, by the way, who are the descendants of Esau, betrayed the Israelites. And the psalmist is saying, "Oh Yahweh, remember the Edomites. Judge them," essentially. The day of Jerusalem, how they said, lay it bare, lay it bare. Essentially, the Edomites were cheering on the Babylonians. Down to its foundation. O daughter of Babylon, doomed to be destroyed. Blessed shall be he who repays you with what you have done to us. Essentially, the rejoicing is over. Like, this justice, this judgment is going to come upon you because you are oppressing us. You're being so cruel and evil to us, so therefore you're going to be punished. And it's a cry for justice. And then this final line is, blessed shall be he who takes your little ones and dashes them against the rocks. I would just say this is an individual who's crying out to the Lord in a very raw way for justice to come upon his enemies for what they have done to them, oppressed them, enslaved them, so on and so forth. That's the way I would explain it. This is not a teaching. This doesn't in any way tell us that we should be like this. We should pray like this. As a matter of fact, when you look at the New Testament, Jesus says, bless your enemies, right? Pray for those who pray for your enemies. Bless those who persecute you, so on and so forth. And I would say there's a different way that we are called to interact even with our enemies. Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do, is a sort of motto we are to live under. The way I would explain this now, I would say this is someone's very raw reaction, but it is not a teaching because it's a psalm. It's very clearly not a teaching. I hope that helps. Let me know if there's any follow-ups to that. So Pisabi said that you shouldn't have sex even if you're married. What did he? I heard he said that it is a sin to do that. I'm not sure whether he's in the chat right now, but Pisabi, you shouldn't be saying stuff like that on other people's channels. They don't know you. By the way, I have a Catholic dynamic equivalency translation that I like a lot. It's really old. It kind of like falls apart. Forgive the movements. This is called the Jerusalem Bible. I was reading this for a very long time. I like it quite a bit. I think you would like it too, because it says Yahweh. I want to read a passage, maybe I'll read out of Exodus 20. Then God spoke all these words. He said, I am Yahweh, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods except me. You shall not make any carven images, so on and so forth. For I, Yahweh, your God, am a jealous God. Yeah. So this is a dynamic equivalency. Now, the thing about this Bible is that it includes Tobit and Maccabees and all of those books. But Wisdom of Solomon, Ecclesiasticus, it includes Ecclesiasticus. So yeah, it's sort of falling apart because it's old. The second thing is, according to non-Christians, God promotes slavery and killed people in a big flood, including families. Correct. God has the prerogative to judge, and God did judge in the great flood because every thought of the human heart was evil. So therefore God judged. God didn't arbitrarily just kill people in the flood. Okay. By the way, it's when they say like, oh, it's a big flood, it's a lot of people that died compared to, even if God killed someone, one person unjustly, then the claim would make sense, or the accusation would make sense. They don't need to make it, oh, look, a lot of people died. So that's to that question, that God promotes slavery. I would say in what way, what kind of slavery, and where? Typically in my interaction, I've realized or I've seen the people who are making these claims do not know the difference between what slavery was back in the days, what slavery was in the transatlantic slave trade. The reasons matter. For example, enslaving people because of the color of their skin is never, ever in the Bible. You never see slavery in the Bible because of the color of their skin. What you see in the Old Testament is multiple kinds of slavery. One of them might be indentured servitude because of wars, where people are enslaved because of war. Most of the time, actually, it has to do with financial stuff. People go into, people lose their land, so on and so forth, because they can't pay stuff back. And so therefore they become workers in the household of the individual they own money to, and therefore they're slaves there. And then once they work that off, they can leave. In those situations, they can leave. They can choose not to leave, by the way. And that's very, very different. So I would say you might want to do some reading in the area of what slavery looks like in the Bible. Then I would just challenge people whether they are okay with the prison system. A lot of these people say, oh, this is slavery. People don't have any rights. Look at our prison system. I'm not a big fan of the prison system, by the way, or even that method of punishing people. I don't think it works. The other thing is, look at debt and how people become enslaved when they're in debt and they can't pay it back. Look at what happens to their lives. The government can come in there and just take your property away. As a matter of fact, someone can sue you, a company or whatever, they can sue you, and through a judge come and take your stuff away. So what's the difference? Well, the difference is that in that context, some of that stuff wasn't there, and the way you would work off your debt was actually working for someone in their household, for their company, if you want to think about it in modern terms. Context matters, and understanding the historical setting matters quite a bit when it comes to these conversations. It's not enough to me for someone to sit there and say it promotes slavery. Now, then I would go on the positive attack after basically answering those questions. I would say, so why is slavery wrong according to your worldview, whatever the worldview may be? Is slavery wrong in Islam? Is slavery wrong in an atheistic worldview? Why? Based on what? I want to hear those answers. Currently, I only have a KJV. Would like to get another Bible. What other translation would you recommend? If you're okay linguistically with reading the KJV and the difficulty the KJV is, I'd say get yourself an ESV. I know Carl's going to tell you to get an LSB Bible. You can read an NASB if you're okay with the dryness of how the NASB is. But yeah, read the New King James Version. I would still have issues because of manuscript use in regards to King James and New King James. I think any modern translation is fine. CSB is a good translation. The Christian Standard Bible is a good translation. What do I have behind me? I have a Catholic NRSV. I have an NASB, NIV Study Bible. And I should take these to church. Oh, I like that Bible. I haven't looked at these Bibles for some time. So this is a New King James Version that I used for a while. But it's it's not very friendly. Just reading. This is one that was given to me upon, let me see if this is the right one. Yeah. Graduation. This is the New American Standard Bible. So the NASB. And I currently, this is kind of my go-to Bible. This is my journaling Bible. As you can tell, it's got tape over it because it's falling apart. This is a gift from a friend. So I read this. You can write in the margins. That's the cool thing, is that you can write in the margins. It's a journaling Bible. And then currently I'm using the Net Bible. But again, I'm using the Net Bible for taking it to church, essentially. My personal reading is ESV. The WEB is open source public domain Bible. It's an interesting experiment. Thought you might like to like it since it's similar to the Net Bible. Interesting. Open source, what does that even mean when it comes to Bible? World English Bible, okay. Okay, thanks. I don't know what this is in regards to. Reason has discovered the struggle for existence and the law that I must throttle all those who hinder the satisfaction of my desires. That is the deduction reason makes, but the law of loving others could not be discovered by reason because it is unreasonable. This makes sense from a Christian worldview, but it is logically... Who said this? It's like a weirdly written poetic sort of thing. If I were to like apply logic to it, I would say it doesn't make sense. I wouldn't agree that that is the deduction reason makes, but the law of loving others is unreasonable. Tolstoy, yeah. You know what this is? Okay, I'm not gonna go into that. It's hyper emotionalism. Like the Bible doesn't do this, by the way. So, for example, the Bible says we love others because God first loved us. Do you see how reasonable that is? It gives you a basis for the love of others. So we love other people because God first loved us, showed us grace, X, Y, and Z. Therefore, because of that, we love other people. That is very, very reasonable. Some of these folks, some authors like Tolstoy or whomever, it doesn't matter. One of the things they do, specifically from the Russian side, Russian thinkers and influencers, philosophers and stuff like that, mystify love and justify hyper emotionalism and justify acting certain ways. Like you see this in the French as well, French thinkers, where like somebody cheats on their spouse, for example. Let me remember this. So the book Dr. Zhivago, and then its movie adaptations, there's been a bunch of them, is this sort of a thinking. It's like, well, I cheated on my wife. Well, that's because love is unreasonable. You just, and I think quite a bit of this exists within our modern American culture, where people will get divorced because they'll say things like, well, I no longer feel the way I did when we got married. Like that spark has been lost or something like that. So it's okay for me. It like justifies my divorce. Or especially when it comes to the LGBT sort of conversations, those are the similar comments that are made. It's like, well, I just naturally have a desire for these things. And then what? Does that mean it's right? Does that mean it's morally permissible? I have a natural tendency towards a lot of things that I would say are morally wrong. So natural desires commits what's called a naturalistic, the idea that because it's natural, therefore it's right, commits the naturalistic fallacy. You can't get an ought from an is. You can't get a moral law, a moral rule from the way things are. That is an impossibility. And it seems to me that this kind of reasoning about loving others being unreasonable or something like that, that's not biblical. The Bible gives us a grounding and a case as to why we ought to be the way we are and do the things that we do. What does everyone have against Catholics? I personally don't have anything against Catholics. I have theological issues with Catholicism. Oh, Arsenal came back. It's 3-3. Wow. They scored in the 90th minute to tie it up. They scored in the 88th and 9th. Guys, Arsenal scored 2 goals in 2 minutes. Whoa, this must be chaos. I got to watch the highlights for this. But if Man City wins their next 2 games, because they got 2 games ahead in hand, then Arsenal will be in second place by 1 point. Oh, don't tell me Man City is going to win the title again by 1 point. That'll be the 3rd time in the last 5-6 years. Wow. Liverpool, Nottingham Forest, 7 a.m. tomorrow. I was binging Dostoevsky because this, and you hit the nail on the head. Without a moral law, biblical grounding, would we be able to make sense of loving others? No, and I think, look, Dostoevsky's right on this stuff. And I think Dostoevsky is essentially responding within that Russian speculative kind of stuff. Russian philosophy and theology is like a world of its own. I have a friend who's done quite a bit of reading on Russian philosophers who came up with really obscure kind of theological ideas that are heretical, but so Dostoevsky is responding to quite a bit of these things, and he's right on that. For me, you see this in certain cultures at certain time periods. Like I said, I see it in Russian philosophy and thinkers of a certain period. I see it within the French quite a bit. I'm not very sure whether in the Germans I see something else, but it's not necessarily that. The third thing that atheists tell me is why God gives cancer to innocent children. Religion only depends on where you were born. By the way, the fact that they are atheists in a Western country or in a Christian-dominated country means that your religion or lack of religion doesn't depend on where you're born. The other thing I would say is, well, why can't we just say the same thing of atheism? Why can't we say, well, your atheism depends on where you were born? Again, this doesn't prove or disprove anything. It doesn't mean whether whatever you believe is right or wrong. What you're telling me is that there's a bunch of people who believe things that were given to them by their culture, society, so on and so forth. Okay, and then what? So for the fact that I'm going to meet American or British or whatever French atheists, I say, hey, you're only an atheist because you were born in this context. And then what? So we want to evaluate the truth of the claims, not whether the claims are or whether that is the case. It doesn't prove anything. In regards to the other one, I'm not going to have quite a bit of time to answer this. I got to go, guys. Why does God give cancer? God doesn't give cancer to children. You got to catch that assumption that's put in there. God has created the world, and the world is impacted by sin and evil, and there's natural disasters and things. By the way, notice how this is tugging on your heart. It's not why does somebody who's 98 years old get cancer? It's the child, right? Because it's an emotional pull. So my response there simply would be, God doesn't give it. We are all in the process of dying and death, and the Christian worldview actually has an answer to this question as to why there is evil in the world, and how we can even call it evil or suffering in the world, why that even exists. Now, why one of the questions we might want to ask is, why does God allow for that to be happening? And there's so many books that are written on this subject. Go watch, I would say, some YouTube videos of William Lane Craig responding to the problem of evil, and then specifically the logical problem of evil, or read some stuff from Dr. Alvin Plantinga, the very famous Christian philosopher who's put this problem of evil conversation to rest in many people's minds. And finally, Stephen, I'll get to this and then go. What about people never heard about the gospel? Like in China, where it's literally illegal to place religious icons on your desk. China has more Christians in it than there are people in the United States. China is sending out missionaries to many, many different places in the world. Chinese Christians are. I'll put China aside. What about people who've never heard the gospel? God ultimately will be just with and bring about justice on people who've never heard the gospel. Maybe it actually could be the case that even if they were to hear the gospel, they would have rejected it, and therefore their punishment would have been a harsher punishment. That's a possibility, and therefore God is actually showing them grace by them never hearing the gospel, because God knows whatever people would respond and do. It could also be that if you look at it from a more Calvinistic sense, it could be the case that they're not part of the elect, and so therefore they're not hearing the gospel because they're not a part of the elect. Regardless of which theological position you take to look at this, there is a consistent answer. But it also should be noted, but there is a reason why Christianity is a missionary religion, meaning that we are to go and reach the world. Jesus gave the Great Commission, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. If people haven't heard, we ought to go to those people so that they would hear. Because how would they believe if they haven't heard? And how would they hear unless someone were to tell them? And we're called to tell them. We tell people about the gospel because we love people, ladies and gentlemen. And let me answer this final question and then go. I'm actually trying to drop a article that you can read. I'm rushing and I'm messing stuff up. So I'm dropping the book link you can buy on Amazon right now, but I'm sure you can find articles and responses on this as well. So this is Alvin Plantinga's book, God, Freedom, and Evil. It's not that expensive. But that's the book that you would want to read on this subject. Okay. Thank you guys. Sorry for cutting this a bit short, everybody. And it's been a very fun discussion. I appreciate it. But again, I got family duties and dad duties to get to, and that's very important. Today's Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Go to church if you haven't gone to church. If you don't have a church and you live in my area, you are more than welcome to visit my church. Just reach out to me, and I'll send you all the appropriate info. So yeah, if you are in Southern California, you don't have a church you go to, feel more than welcome to reach out to me. You can always email me at info@apologiacenter.com, or you can message me, you can DM me on Instagram. So take care. God bless you, and I will see you Monday. No, maybe not. Maybe not Monday, because it's April 24th. We will see what we're doing on April 24th, but it depends where I am. I'll see you next week. Take care. God bless.